Hello and welcome to This Is Scotland, the podcast that explores the past, present and future of this amazing wee country. I am Ali Heather.
And I'm Coinneach MacLeod. How are you? I'm very good. What have you been up to this week?
This week it's been a belter actually. I've been all over the place as always, as we always are. But I was actually doing it at the V&A. The V&A's got, they do one
V&A
big...
Dundee.
The V&A in Dundee.
Yeah.
The beautiful kind of Japanese architect designed building down on the waterfront. Most of our listeners, I'm sure, know it. But I would really recommend it for a visit because it's got loads of free galleries, got really interesting turning over free galleries. But it's got this big exhibition about catwalk fashion. And actually, it really surprised me how much depth there is, how much fashion's changed, and how much fashion's kind of contributed to how me and you dressed today. Obviously, we're both pretty fashionable guys.
You can tell. Today particularly.
Today in particular. But no, I really enjoy the way of like going to a big exhibition that's done well and being kind of challenged about something I wouldn't usually think about.
Yeah, something you don't know so much about. Always the way, isn't it?
What are you up to yourself? What's your list?
I've had a great week. I have been travelling about Scotland trying different ice creams. I mean, is that not your absolute dream week to have? And even though I think I was at about 7 or 8 different places, I was in Arran.
Lovely.
And Arran ice cream, you see it around a lot, but to go and try it at source. And even when I was on Arran as well, they also have these amazing milk dispensers. I don't know if you've seen them.
They're called cows, yeah.
No,
a milk dispenser.
It started as a cow, but it turned into a machine.
Got you.
So you can literally bring your own bottle, put however it is a pound in, and get fresh milk from the side of the street. But
that's
Arran,
brilliant.
It's brilliant. But Arran ice cream, absolute cracker. But I was in Bacardon, just outside Oban. If you fancy Highland cow ice cream, go to Highland Fold. They make it out of the milk from the Highland cows.
Lovely.
So lots of amazing ice creams. Isn't a ginger ice cream?
I would actually like. On that subject, I was along at the old classic of Janettas in St Andrews. It's made of an East Coast tradition. I'm not sure. You come across Janettas?
No, I haven't.
So it's like a St Andrews kind of institution. It's just down near the Bayer Theatre and stuff like that towards the cathedral. But there's always a queue at the door and they just make beautiful homemade gelatos of every flavour. And I would recommend, if you're down there, hey, look in. And I'm now thinking, actually, you're talking about that Highland Fold in Aberdeen, Mackie's ice cream. Delicious. In the middle of town, there's I think it's called 19.7. Is their ice cream spot right in the middle of town by Marshall
College. So
College.
Mackie's have somewhere in Aberdeen?
Yeah, they got a wee concession.
I didn't know that.
Loads of good flavours, and it's in that perfect spot next to Marshall College. You can enjoy the brilliant granite and things.
To be fair, Mackie's indulgent vanilla, oofed.
I couldn't agree more. I would say Mackie's the originators of some of my favourite ever voter fraud. So when I used to be a student at Aberdeen University, right, and in the old days, you still, when you get elected as rector, you kind of, you compete to be rector, and then all the students vote for you. And then at Aberdeen, you get put on the back of a big kind of model Highland cow and carried through to announce the start of your rectorship. And Mr. Mackie just really wanted that, so he promised every student free ice cream if they voted for him.
That is the dream.
And they voted for him, and he gave them no ice cream. He just got us right on the queue and then bloody disappeared back to the farm.
I'm sure he's preparing for it. He's preparing for it.
This was years ago. Anyway.
So what are we talking about this week?
We've got loads to talk about. We're going to talk about Will You Marry Me?
Yes.
All the wedding, thank you so much.
Yes, I will.
All the wedding traditions and stuff, because I myself have just got engaged.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Me and Zoe are very happy.
Absolutely.
Yes. So we're going to talk about all the mad traditions that come along with that, the stuff I'm looking forward to, the stuff I'm a bit feared of. What else are we going to chat about?
We're going to chat about a bit of a historical thing, the changing borders of Scotland, how Scotland has been shaped over the years, and actually how it's stayed pretty consistent for these past few hundred years. This is pretty rare for a European country.
And we can pitch a few changes we might like to make, a little tweak we might like to make some of those borders. Yeah, there's a couple of places that we're kind of needing to get through. And our final subject for today?
Final subject today, well, it's summertime and we're going to be travelling to lots of amazing museums around Scotland.
That's
so we're going to talk about maybe our favourite Scottish treasures?
That's it. So obviously it's like school holiday time. I've got nieces and nephews, and I also run tour guiding. So I'll be taking loads at like all these different museums. I'll be giving you my best shouts for places to visit. But we also, as always, want to hear fae you guys. So get in touch with your ideas for where you love visiting. Where is cheap or free to take the family? Where are Scotland's greatest treasures that we can go and enjoy them? That might be in a museum, a heritage centre, or just out in a field someplace. Get in touch. But let's start with marriage, because I am soon to be a married man.
I know. I mean, Zoe beat me to it and asked you first.
Exactly,
or you asked her, maybe. I don't know how it went.
No, I did. I went tradish. I asked her,
nice.
and she's fae the Highlands, and her family are really a lovely bunch, but have that kind of tradition to them.
Yeah, I met Zoe's dad recently.
Oh yeah, Big Roy, of course. Shout out to Big Roy McKenzie. Great guy. But he, so I went up and got the permission, as is traditional, but slightly untraditional. I actually asked the mum and the dad, because I think nice. like the Roy is lovely, but he isn't in charge in that house. Zoe is one of 4 daughters, and the matriarch of the house, Kim, is very much the boss. So I asked them both, and then got the ring, and just waited until the right time. And the right time was I wanted to be in the Highlands, because that's where she's from, and it means a lot to her, of course. And also I wanted to be a place we can go back to, but somewhere that's a bit special. So we went near the A9. In the Cairngorms is this amazing place called Ruthven Barracks, which is the site, is a beautiful hill where you could go to the Cairngorms, the forest of the Cairngorms at Kingussie behind you. Then you have the big wide open glen Strath in front of you, and you're up on this kind of like man-made hill. And so went in there, waited for the tourists to disperse, and just kind of waited for her to turn her back, got down on one knee, got the ring out, and she turned around and just yelled, "Shut up!" Total shock. Which was great, and actually on cloud 9. Just lovely stuff.
Congratulations.
And but I'd forgot that when you ask someone to marry you, you've then got to think about all the marriage stuff. And there's so much in Scotland that's like genuinely exciting, but also quite intimidating.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, in theory, Scotland should be seen as probably one of the most romantic countries in the world. You know, I should say, is some of the most wonderful places to ask someone to marry you, in front of castles or on beaches, on mountain tops, amazing islands. But isn't it funny that there's one place in Scotland that's probably more famous than any to do with weddings? And I'm not too sure if I would call it the most romantic, beautiful spot in Scotland. No offence, but Gretna Green.
Gretna Green.
Why? What made that so connected to weddings?
For whatever reason, across Europe, after the Protestant Reformation and things, rules around marriage got really tight, and you had to get parental permission for your marriage, or the local priest or minister had to like make sure that the marriage was entirely legitimate and oversee the whole thing. In Scotland, it was completely day what you like, largely. Anyone, because we were all allowed to commune directly with God, any one of us could take the part of the minister and just marry you, and you didn't need parental permission if you were like 15, 16. So Gretna Green was the first place you'd get to if you're running over the border for England.
Right.
So relentlessly, you'd get all these.
So the laws in England are much stricter than Scotland.
Yes.
Because there was that thing you went, you were married over the anvil, wasn't it, in Gretna?
Exactly. So the local blacksmith, I think it was just one blacksmith, but maybe there's a few at it. He would just have a side business, a wee side hustle, where he would marry off anyone that turned up, because he was the first guy you'd see, and he would just marry you at the anvil, declare you man and wife, and that was you. And because of that looseness, you got all sorts of different marriage forms and ceremonies, things like handfasting, which is very popular now. Basically, for those that are not aware, it's quite common at wedding services in Scotland now for the bride and groom to have their hands bound together by maybe a tartan ribbon or something, and that's, tying the knot. It's the ceremonial joining together of the families. You might have 2 pieces of fabric that you tie together across the hands, and that was one of the ways that marriage ceremonies would be conducted. And there are some records from, I think, the 17th century, early 18th century, of these handfastings being effectively a trial marriage. So you'd get married for a year, and then if at the end of that you really didn't fancy each other, you'd just dissolve the marriage, because dating wasn't such a thing. So you didn't get a crack at that. You'd meet, you'd wed, and then you'd give it a year and see how it all went on. And maybe if you just couldn't stand each other, or if the marriage hadn't borne fruit, you might go your separate ways. And that's kind of found its way back in, which I think is really romantic.
It's so interesting. Again, you start to see this contrast between some of the traditions, maybe on the islands certainly, and how different they might be to the mainland of Scotland as well. Certainly on the islands, and I remember talking to my auntie about this. There was a thing called the Réiteach on
the Réiteach.
Lewis.
I've heard of this. I've never attended.
So basically, it's a bit like going to ask the father of the bride for his daughter's hand in marriage, but it was a big moment, and everybody in the village would be asked, and obviously he would know what was going to happen that evening, the father of the bride. So he would go round the village that day asking let's just say the more mature ladies of the village to come round that night, and if old Ishbel had been at the Peats, tell her to keep her wellies on. If Morag had forgotten her teeth, don't worry about that, just come over anyway. And as the groom would come in and say, I would like your daughter's hand in marriage, the dad would go, no, you don't want her. What about this crowd? And he would parade the ladies from the village out. They would do a wee performance, maybe a song or a dance, or take their teeth out or dance in their wellies. And he would have to kind of politely decline their advances until eventually the daughter would come out and go, yes, this is who I would like to marry. And this would happen quite a few weeks before the wedding, but it was really the start.
Oh,
it was really the start of that kind of thing.
Coming in for the Peats only to get rejected.
So that was a lovely thing, and maybe as well even the story of this might not be true, but I'm connecting it. Hen parties. The day before the wedding, it was very traditional that all the villagers would come round to the wedding house with a hen. And they would sit plucking the hen, talk about, the wedding plans for the next day, etc. But have real crack. It was only for the women.
No way.
And that was the original hen party.
Oh, that's
I guess.
Great. I've got no idea the connection. That's great, though. That's
great. So there's lots of these wonderful things. I loved, there was a saying my auntie told me, Hamposa Colochri Shellan, Hamil aun Saga aun. Marriage is like a bee. It has the honey and the sting. So be prepared for both of those.
I think she's the honey and the sting, if I'm being honest.
So that I think it's exciting for people who are getting married in Scotland, or maybe even, it's quite popular now for people to travel to Scotland for weddings as well.
I love that. I actually offer reasonably priced tours for people that are coming to Scotland, getting married, and their families want to be tour of Scotland. So get in touch, historicalleytours.com.
There you go. But you know what, actually, Ali, there is 1 month that they say don't get married in. I don't know if you know this, but there is a tradition.
Oh yeah, hold on, yeah. No, Kim was just telling me this. My future mother-in-law was just telling me, was it not May?
You're totally right.
You can't get married in May, she's telling me.
Don't get married in May, which is unfortunate for most people. May is a great time to visit Scotland because the weather's usually pretty good. Not as many people here because the summer holidays haven't started. I was trying to find out, was there a reason? Was there something? And I sort of saw that it might come down to a connection with Mary, Queen of Scots. She had married the Earl of Bothwell in May of 1567. As we know, that didn't go particularly well.
No, he was a wrong'un.
He was a wrong'un. And so there was, at the time, this kind of connotation of, well, May weddings are pretty bad luck. But to be honest with you, it's such a great time to get married. I'm hoping that no month is bad luck. No, it's
for the best. I'm no going for May.
You're not going for May.
Kim made it absolutely clear I wasn't allowed. But there's two things that I grew up around in terms of wedding traditions. One that I'm definitely going to carry on myself, and the other one I'm terrified might be carried out. So one was the scrammy, which in some parts of Scotland I think is called the porut. So the wedding couple come out of the church, and so my village in Newbiggin in rural Angus, the Auld Kirk is right on the main street, and the couple would come out and they'd have like their family kind of cheering them out the church, and they'd just throw fistfuls of pound coins in a celebration of abundance. And so me and all the other kids of the village, I did this deep into my 30s, would run around picking up the pound coins.
Pound coins?
Pound coins. Oh, yeah, you can't hide money.
Certainly as a scramble. I thought it was pennies, but you've got fancy pals.
There's money in tatties. That's the Angus motto. There's money in tatties. So yeah, they'd throw out, I'm sure it's pound coins, but you'd certainly run around, like we'd be running into traffic after these coins.
Well, it's so interesting because, again, last week we were talking about the cookbook, The Scots Kitchen by F. Marion MacNeil. And there's something sort of similar in a way in her cookbook. There's a recipe for what's called a bride's bun. A bride's bun is a Shetland shortbread flavoured. It's a classic petticoat-tailed shortbread flavoured with caraway seeds, and it's made by the mother of the bride on the day of her daughter's wedding. And as the couple return to the family home, the mother arrives with this beautiful, sweet-smelling shortbread, and you think, oh, that's not lovely. She's going to give the bride and the groom a piece of shortbread. No, she grabs the shortbread and she smashes it over her daughter's head, and all the guests run towards the bride to try and catch a piece of the shortbread. And if you put that under your pillow that night, you're going to dream of your future husband or wife. And even if you don't, you got a piece of shortbread under your pillow, which at 3 a.m. after a big night out is the absolute dream.
Can I say, Kim Mackenzie, my future mother-in-law's baking is so good I would never have it broken. I'm sooking up to something chronic. Kim, the finest baker in Scotland. But no, the other tradition, and this is one that I mind when I was wee in Carnoustie was the first time I saw it. But so I was at my granny and granddad's in Carnoustie, and a guy was brought in a trailer, really slowly driven up the road, tied hands behind his back, covered in treacle or oil or some sort of horrible fluid.
What's it called again? The
blackening.
The blackening.
And so everyone's coming out and throwing eggs at him, shaking flour over him, throwing feathers on him, and he's laughing away. He is getting completely coated in this stuff. He's then, and I went, of course I went out and joined them. And he got taken down to the North Sea, the wee beach just at West Haven there at Carnoustie. And he went out into the sea to wash it all off. And the blackening is this tradition, and it's right up the east coast, definitely very strong in Orkney and Aberdeenshire. I've heard of it on the west coast. I just know my area, so I'm right in. If they do blackenings where you are, let us know. The only blackening I wanted to do and aborted was when my brother got married about 3 years ago, because he is 6'2" and at the time was a heavyweight boxer, and you're meant to just grab the guy. And you and your mates wrestle him down, and you tie him up, and you cover him in this, that, and the other. I thought, he'll batter us. He will knock our heads together, and it'll be a terrible day for all involved. Like, it was the blackening of the eyes.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was in Aberdeen, there was a guy that was a farmer, a young farmer from Aberdeenshire, and him and his mates grabbed him and put him in the sheep dip, put him in the dye that they put in sheep wool. And on his wedding day, he was still green.
Wow.
Like, he was, like, visibly very green. And his wife was fuming. Because he just looked ill. He looked like Frankengroom.
Let's not encourage too many of these. But if you are getting married this summer particularly, obviously let us know, get in touch. If there's any of these traditions, on wedding days in Lewis, the kind of bed sheets are out in the, out in the line. There's lots of lovely things. Feet washing the night before your wedding by your friends. There's lots of lovely, lovely traditions. So are you going to do any of these wonderful traditions? Have you decided that May is not going to be unlucky for you and you are going to get married in May? Get in touch. If you want us at the wedding, we are also available. We are the Cilla Black of Scotland.
If you Bix, if say people don't have a mother who can make them an amazing bride's bun, would you say that the Hebridean Baker's shortbread is an ideal substitute?
I think Hebridean Baker shortbread, the dream. And again, not only can you can buy a couple of boxes, one to smash over somebody's head and the other one to eat, to enjoy while you're watching it.
I think our wedding catering is just 3 courses of your oatcakes.
Absolutely. Whiskey shortbread available now.
The only other things that I was going to say that I love and I'm really looking forward to, obviously the whole wedding's going to be wonderful, but things like the wedding ceilidh and the big Loch Lomond is so fun. Like, so if you've never been to a Scottish wedding, towards the end of the night, you all link arms and sing Runrig's version of a tune called Loch Lomond.
Has to be Runrig's.
It's a banger. And then you all charge in the middle, and you come out, and you charge in the middle again, and you're like, you're dragging grannies with you. There's toddlers about. It's absolute pandemonium.
100%.
And they are just such a joyful thing. And I can't wait, obviously, to share the marriage and share the wedding with all the people that we really care about. It'll be a great big one. I look forward to seeing you there.
It'll be great. It'll be great. So let's shift gear a wee bit and take some kind of history into the podcast again,
Please.
which we both love to do.
Yeah.
And we were chatting earlier about the kind of change in shape, the change in borders of Scotland.
Yeah,
and this is fascinating.
Always found it so interesting
Yeah.
because, like, the reason I was thinking about this was because I was out in Islay and I was learning that the Isle of Man was Scottish.
Yes.
Until not too long ago. And you know what? The Isle of Man, it's not technically part of the UK either. It's its own wee bit. And I don't think there's anything stopping us from annexing it. I think they'd be delighted.
That, of course, comes from the Treaty of Perth, 1266, where the Hebrides and Man, Isle of Man, were bought from Norway.
Yeah.
And yeah, I actually don't know. So 1266, Isle of Man became part of Scotland.
Yeah.
But I actually don't know when this sort of disappeared
Drifted
away from
off.
us. They kind of drifted
They
off
drifted
a wee
off
bit.
and they became like a sort of independent little bit. And so they were the heart. Isle of Man, actually, because it's only a dozen miles off the coast of Scotland. I thought it was much further away. But if you head straight south for Solway, like Solway Firth, like off sort of the Dumfriesshire coast, it's 12 miles away. And it was the centre for all smuggling in the 1800s. Because it was a separate kingdom, they'd use it for warehousing. So they were allowed to import from France when we were at war with France, and they didn't have import duties. So all these merchants would come from France, leave all these huge sort of casks of lovely French wine and brandy and tobacco from the Americas and just warehouse it on the Isle of Man. And then Scots merchants would go and get all their illicit orders, sneak over by night and bring it all from the Isle of Man. In fact, it was and all these sinuous illegal trade networks blossomed out from the Dumfries area, and it was Rabbie Burns, our national poet, that was charged with policing them.
You're listening to This Is Scotland. We'll be right back.
Ali, quick question.
Uh-oh.
You're stranded on a Scottish island for a week. What 3 things are you bringing?
I mean, it depends on the island, but I suppose, first of all, like, if you're on an island, you want to make the most of it with some good reading material. So I'm bringing the Scots magazine. If I'm on an island, there's a decent chance that there's a distillery nearby, so I'll get a good whiskey for there. And it's never as hot as I want it to be on Scotland's islands, so I'm bringing a cosy jumper.
Good answer.
I reckon. Because Scotland always has another story to tell. There's hidden history, amazing people, island life, food, travel, culture.
And for almost 3 centuries, the Scots magazine has been bringing those stories to readers everywhere.
So wherever you are,
Keep Scotland close
subscribe today at scotsmagazine.com.
and enjoy Scotland stories every month.
He was a customs man.
Of course he was.
Yeah, in Dumfries. And he actually, this is something no one knows about Burns. It's one of my favourite Burns facts. He actually led an armed group with cutlasses drawn and guns out, charging into the surf of the Solway Firth to board a smuggler ship coming in from the Isle of Man.
Wow.
Phenomenal. What the hell are we talking about?
Yeah, well,
Sorry, I got
actually, do you know what? 13th century probably was the core of when what we think of roughly as the Scottish borders absolutely became them. You know, the Treaty of York was probably one of the biggest moments in shaping
Tell us a wee bit about
Scotland.
that. Tell us a wee bit about that.
1237, it is an agreement between Henry III of England, Alexander II of Scotland. And again, it's always interesting when you read history from different people's perspectives. When you read about the Treaty of York from the English perspective, it reads very differently to how it reads from the Scottish perspective.
Yeah.
But it was very much about the areas of Northumberland, Cumberland and Westmoreland. They were kind of placed officially in English sovereignty. Sovereignty. I mean, it had sort of moved between the two over the years. So England's like, no, they're ours. And so when you see it from England's perspective, they were like, ha, we got them. Whereas when you read it from Scotland's perspective, they were like going, oh no, we quite like our border here. We're pretty happy that we've now effectively established this border. And that, apart from a few tweaks over the past 1,000 years, mainly Berwick.
Berwick-upon-Tweed should be yours. Lovely tune.
Totally. If you're from Berwick, could you come back?
Yeah,
come back.
Berwick, would you fancy it? Would you like to join us?
Rejoin us. Your football team's already there.
Yeah, so Berwick's football team plays in the Scottish leagues. I think the rugby team plays in the Scottish leagues.
They do.
And
yeah.
I think in a sort of like a blindfold test, most people would think that the accents from there are basically Scottish.
Well, it's so interesting, as I said, where that border lies. But it very much, I said, it hasn't really changed since that time, which is a kind of relatively unique situation considering all that has happened in this last 1,000 years.
I mean, the big ones are Orkney and Shetland. They'll be shouting at their devices. So Orkney and Shetland were a completely distinct and separate place for the longest time and very disputed, but we only inherited them by accident as a wedding dowry deposit.
It was the wedding dowry, yep. So 1468, 1469, King Christian of Denmark and Norway pledged Orkney and Shetland to security of like an unpaid dowry for his daughter Margaret, and so they were sort of like, I mean, did they even know what was going on? They were like, sure, take Orkney and Shetland. That'll do you, kind of thing. So Margaret was getting married to James III, and her dad gave Orkney and Shetland back to Scotland. Fascinating.
And it'd been out of Scottish hands for 500 years.
Yeah,
it's pre-Scotland.
Absolutely.
And I do wonder,
so really, they're the last piece. They were the last piece of the Scotland jigsaw that we know today.
And I would say there is this, I don't think it's a mainstream movement, but within Shetland there is discussions about a Shetland autonomy movement or a Shetland independence movement. And actually a lot of the arguments that I have for Scottish independence, Shetland has for itself, because they argue that because they're quite far away from Edinburgh and far away from London, they are out of sight, out of mind in terms of infrastructure investments, and they're out of sight, out of mind in terms of like helping the place to really thrive. And you've been yourself to the Faroes. So the Faroes are like the next step away towards like Iceland and things. Not dissimilar to Shetland in a number of ways, but their infrastructure is better, their GDP is better, their pride in language is better, their knitting is thriving.
Their knitting is great.
What would you say? Like, would it be better for Shetland if they went autonomous like the Faroe Islands?
It's a good question. I mean, the Faroe Islands obviously still part of the Kingdom of Denmark, but they do certainly have a strong autonomy and quite a big independence movement going on at the moment. There's a certain kind of balance there that there's been a significant support from the Danish government over this past few years when you talk about infrastructure, etc. But it's a fascinating decision to make from the perspective of the identity of these islands, particularly Shetland and Orkney, because they were the last piece of the jigsaw.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just think it's interesting that this country has relatively stayed the same shape for this past 800 years, and could it change?
Could it change? And I do think, because I lived in Aberdeen and there's so many Shetlanders there. That's the big hospital. That's where so many Shetlanders came down for work. And so the pubs, every night there was a different pub session, a folk music session in Aberdeen. So each pub would have its night. So Monday to Sunday you could get to a session. Shetland fiddlers were the backbones of so many of those sessions. Their music is incredible. But, if it best suits them to go autonomous, good luck.
Well, one of my favourite things, probably won't get the chance now, getting too old for it, but there's an amazing thing called the World Island Games.
Oh, yeah!
Which I might have this wrong, but I think the next ones are in the Faroe Islands, actually, I've got in my head. And then the representation from the Scottish Islands that compete, we compete as the Western Isles, but then Orkney compete, Shetland compete, Isle of Man compete, and it's fantastic to see the flags of these islands as well.
That's it. So all these different islands, more and more recently, have got their own independent flags. Like Barra got its own one only fairly recently, in the last couple of decades, and it's that Nordic cross that they're pretty much all chosen.
Yeah, you used to have the same, similar to the Barra one, but slightly different, more the Norwegian style of it. Shetland have that.
Shetland
also.
and Orkney and Caithness have their own. I think they've got the Nordic cross as well.
Do.
And I think there is that real, we talked about it in a previous podcast, but that real connection genetically linguistically with Orkney. With Norway and with that whole kind of Nordic zone, and I fully respect it. And I do I'd love Scotland to be independent because of the greater democracy, the greater sort of like power to have over our own lives. But who am I to deny that to Shetland?
Yeah,
like if it best suits them to be semi-autonomous but still part of the kind of wider Scottish family, I'd really embrace that for them.
So we've had relatively consistent borders, but you never know.
No. And I think there's actually a petition in Alloa to kick Fife out, but I would never endorse that myself.
You talked earlier that we're getting into summertime, lots of adventures for families and folk kind of looking at museums and things like that. So obviously Scotland has just some of the best museums in the world.
Yeah.
Which ones are you excited about visiting? But particularly, is there a treasure that you are really recommending people go and visit this summer?
Well, I'm going to do two. I'm going to do one that's a dead easy visit that everyone can get to because of its location. Then I'm going to do one that's a little bit of a trickier visit. So I would say the 19th century incredible building that is Dundee's McManus Museum and Gallery. So it's right in the middle of Dundee. So wherever you live in Scotland, we have the Ember bus system, which is really cheap, or free if you're under 21 or under 22 or over what age are you again?
But it's free for the elderly. I don't get free buses yet.
But it's very cheap, or it's right by the train station as well.
Sure.
So you're within an hour and a half of it, pretty much anywhere in the kind of central belt, Aberdeen way, and it is packed with amazing sort of mementos, treasures. The room that I think is the treasure is called the Victorian Gallery.
Okay.
So it's this big room full of paintings which hasn't changed to the Victorian era. The walls are painted scarlet, and the paintings are all in big gold frames, and they go right the way up the wall. The Victorians believed in cramming the space, and these paintings are some of the most significant in Scotland. You got paintings of the world's first painting of a football match is in the McManus. You've got these amazing paintings of Highland romanticism. You've got paintings of fairy queens. It is an amazing room to go and spend time, and it's completely free.
Okay.
And
Brilliant.
no matter where you live in Scotland, if it's anywhere across the Central Belt or up the East Coast, you're less than 90 minutes away. Come and see it. It's yours. Enjoy it. The more out of the way one, I recently went to Port Mahomet in the Tarbert Peninsula. You're aware of this place at all? So it is, if you go north fae Dingwall towards Caithness, it's like this wee sort of hammerhead shape that goes out onto a little peninsula, and it's got Port Mahomet and Nig, and it's got a selection of little amazing sort of Pictish stones up there, and there's a increasingly famous statue of a mermaid perched out on rock, like a big bronze mermaid. But the Port Mahomet, it's called the Tarbert Discovery Centre, and it's an old church, and they think that is where the Book of Kells was written. So the most amazing piece of like Celtic art and religious book was made in this amazing place, and the Museum Visitor Centre is just rammed with history. So like you got downstairs, you've got a basement where a bunch of Mackays, who were raiding the Rosses, were chased and burnt alive in what is now the museum. You've also got all these amazing Pictish stones. You have these Neolithic carved stone balls that are these really enigmatic, curious shapes from our earliest ancestors. It's a treasure trove.
Amazing.
So that's more of a road trippy one unless you live in the area. But get to the Tarbert Discovery Centre if you've got the time. And if like you're just wanting a day trip, get yourself to the McManus in Dundee. The Victorian Gallery is amazing. What's your shouts?
Well, I've got one in particular, but actually can be done in 3 different places. Many years ago, when I lived in London for a couple of years, if I was feeling homesick, I would go to the British Museum and just stand looking at the Lewis Chessmen and hearing people talk. Because there were so many anecdotes, because it's such a destination, even at the British Museum. People talking about that some people say, I visited the island. Remember one guy I overheard talking about a jazz band he was in that would play in Stornoway. Remember people saying they were reading it going, these are from the Hebrides, but they're mythical islands, aren't they? And I was like going, no, they're not mythical islands.
For the listeners that aren't aware, what are the Lewis Chessmen?
So the Lewis Chessmen are a set of chess pieces pieces. I think it was 78 carved chess pieces were found. A man called Callum MacLeod, he was tending his cows down on the beach in Uig and just happened upon this beautiful ornate box in the sand. He opened it up and all these chess and gaming pieces and a belt buckle were in this box. So he put them on display in the cowshed for everybody to see.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then somebody came and bought them off him. Now, I'm guessing, I think it was about £300 that were paid for this. I'm sure at the time that was a bit of a win for Callum. But to put into perspective, there was a lost piece that went to auction because in theory, most of them are in, and that's why it's so great, because they're in the British Museum in London, the main ones. But there's a small selection in the National Museum in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and very proudly back at Museum na NGaedhelan at Lewis Castle in Stornoway. We have 6 pieces. But one lost one was found in a drawer, seemingly, and was sold for $1 million at auction a couple of years ago. So poor Callum got 300 quid for 78 of them. If you had just held on just a wee bit longer. But most of the pieces are carved from walrus ivory. Nobody really knows where they're from. Most people believe they're from Trondheim in Norway. And a rogue Viking was probably on his way to Iceland, stopped off in Lewis for the crack, and then thought, you know what, I'm just going to put these here. I'll pick them up on the way home.
Aye.
And then most likely didn't make it home.
Good.
But
I'm dead against Vikings, as explained previously.
But the pieces are just the features on them are
phenomenal.
just absolutely phenomenal. The warders, as they're called, the berserkers, I think are probably my favorite. You see them biting the shield.
Yes, they got like the shield in front of them.
Which is just amazing. That comes from the warriors of Odin, the kind of sagas of Odin and what they did and going to battle.
Well, berserkers were real. Berserkers
Absolutely.
were real people who would take, it seems to be, kind of psychoactive substances to get themselves particularly mental before battle. And that is where we get the phrase going berserk.
Going berserk is from the berserkers, absolutely. But they have travelled the world, these pieces. Absolutely.
So cool.
They've been to museums in Japan and America and everywhere. So the fact that people can see them, you know, obviously I would love them all to be back on Lewis.
Yeah.
But the fact that there is now pieces back on Lewis, and the Museum na NGaedhelan in Stornoway at Lewis Castle is absolutely wonderful, and that is very much the centerpiece of those as well.
That's great.
So do check them out. Either in London if you can't make it to Scotland this summer, or in the wonderful National Museum of Edinburgh. But please try and make it to Stornoway, nearly the home. Just a few miles from Uig where they were found. That would be a very special trip to do.
That's a great story. I didn't know that about them being found and put on display in a byre. That's tremendous. That is tremendous. We've not got too much more time today.
No, that was amazing.
I really want to. I want to wrap this up. In fact, since we're on the subject of Vikings, I think I'd like to tell you about the very first Scots to set foot in America. So this is way, way, way back when Vikings were. I mean, we're still in the end of the Viking age, but the Norse settlers, the Norse raiders are going between Iceland, Greenland, very much the Isle of Man, the Hebrides, that sort of area. Loads of ships going to and fro. The weather was calmer, so these big voyages were possible. And a number of voyages had seen the Americas. We think probably Canada sort of area. Basically, when they're aiming for Greenland, overshot it. They saw the coast, and so they knew it was there. But they'd never landed. So some Norse adventurers went across and decided to land, but they didn't want to go ashore themselves in case it was dangerous, in case anything ate them, in case the land was inhabited by spirits. So they had 2 Scots slaves, a man and a woman, a couple, and those 2 were put ashore for 24 hours to see if anything ate them.
And
nothing did.
Nothing
and
ate
so the
them.
first Scots in America were brought there as enslaved people by the Vikings.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's my little history fact for you.
There you go. Well, see, we're talking about Scotland. You know, I always like to give a wee Gaelic word of the podcast. So what about the word for Scotland in Gaelic.
Please.
It is the word alba. It's spelled A-L-B-A, but there's a hidden A in it. So people might say alba, but it is alba. Alba. So try that. Alba.
Alba.
There you go. So
Alba.
that is the Gaelic for Scotland.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Perfect note to finish on.
So I'll see you later in the week for our Q&A podcast. Please keep sending in your questions. Hilarious, insightful, ridiculous. We love them all. We'll get through as many as we can.
I've got a question for them that I want your comments on. You were slagging this top off before the recording. I think this looks class. The mighty Dundee United, the world famous Dundee United. I think I look lovely. Connie wasn't sure about it. What are your thoughts? Praise only.
There you go. That's some way to finish. People who are listening to the podcast will be delighted they're only listening to the podcast, not watching this podcast. But we'll see you later in the week for the Q&A. Please send your questions through Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram at This Is Scotland Pod, or to the Hebridean Baker or
Historic_Ali.
And we'll see you later in the week.
Cheerio and Drasta.